Hey, it's your girl LaTanya Moore here with Real Perspectives, and we have a fabulous show today. We have Mr. Eliott Katz, and we're going to be talking about gender role reversal. Now, Eliott is an author and sought-after speaker on the subject of gender roles and the steps that men need to take to be real men. Eliott is working to change the men of the world to bring peace to relationships by sharing the teachings about being a man that have been lost to this generation. His book, Being the Strong Man a Woman Wants, Timeless Wisdom on Being a Man, is striking a chord around the world. It has been translated into 24 languages by major publishers in Europe, Asia, Latin America, and Africa. He has been interviewed on more than 200 radio and TV shows in the United States, Canada, the UK, and Singapore. He can be seen on lots of talk shows in the areas. He's here with us today, though, to talk about his book and about the steps that men can take to improve their relationships. Eliott, welcome to the show.
Great to be here.
Now, Eliott, I want to get right to it.
Okay.
What is your view on the gender role reversal?
Well, it seems today that men are acting like women, and women are acting like men, but women want real men, and that's what's an underlying issue in many relationships, that men are thinking, well, I'm supposed to be this way, I'm being sensitive, I'm developing my feminine side, but women really want a man who's a man.
Wow. So elaborate a little bit more, because, and probably in the last 10 or 15 years, there really has been this push for men to be, softer, for lack of a better word, and like you said, let's tap into our emotions. Why do you think that women have such a problem with that?
Well, it's interesting that men have so willingly become, softer and more sensitive. But, it's good to be sensitive in the terms of being sensitive to other people's feelings. But when it really comes down to it, a woman wants, when she's in a relationship with a man, married or in a relationship, she wants a man she can lean on. She wants a man who's the rock that she can lean on in difficult times. And, all these ideas about being sensitive, it really, I think men have adopted to it so easily because they're very confused today. Traditionally a father or other older male role model was a role model to a son, or about what it means to be a man. And, a young boy learned from his example, but that's so lost today. So many boys are growing up in family where there's divorce. They hardly know their father. They watch television. All the men are portrayed as buffoons. They go to school. Most of the teachers are women, and they never were really taught what it means to be a man. And I think for men, generally, that they need to learn what it means to be a man. It doesn't come naturally. They really need that role model of a father or other male role model. And so when they hear all this stuff, be sensitive, develop their feminine side, they think, well, this is what it would take to make a woman in my life happy. So I want her to be happy. So this is what I'll be. And no one's ever taught me. Like I've talked to men when I tell them, the reason you're having problems in your relationship is you're really not being the man. She really wants a man she can look up to, who's strong, who takes charge, who shows leadership, who's not a controlling tyrant, but not someone who always says, oh, whatever you want, you decide. I mean, that's a big, big turnoff to a woman. And when I tell them this, they say no one's ever told them this before. It's so men are just sort of gone with the flow. This is what they hear. They weren't taught what it really means to be a man, what a woman really wants in a man, and so and that's created the situation we have today, where so many men are just so confused about what their role is of being a man.
It's really interesting, and partly the reason why I wanted to have you on the show, because exactly what you just mentioned, I was having a conversation with a guy that I know, and this was probably about a month ago, and I was saying that exact thing to him. I was saying women really do want men that are assertive, not aggressive, but are assertive and can assert themselves in a way that is not intimidating, but certainly in a way that says this is where things stop. And he and I had probably about an hour-long debate about that. And I said to him, I said, but the difference is I'm a woman, and I'm telling you this. I'm saying to you, this is what it is, and it's very much in line with what you're saying. And you actually have mentioned, I know, in other interviews and just in your thought leadership on this topic, that this very dynamic is frustrating for women. And so it really is the underlying cause that leads to some breakups. How specifically, though, did you come to that particular conclusion?
The response from women about my book, like I've gotten reviews on Amazon and emails from women who say, if my husband had understood this, our marriage would not have disintegrated. They don't want a man who's a controlling tyrant. They don't want who's controlling every movement they make. But they don't want a man who comes home and whatever you want, you decide. Or even single women have told me. So many single women have told me that they go out with a guy. He asks them out. He can't even choose a place to go for a cup of coffee. He wants her to decide. And when they get to a place, he can't even choose where to sit. It's like, you're not controlling her if you're a man with a plan. That's what women want, a man with a plan. You want to ask her out? Have a plan. Where do you want to go to take her? It shows this thing. What you're showing is that you can't make a simple decision. You can't deal with a simple problem. How are you going to handle the problems in the marriage? Are you going to leave every problem to her? Because that's what happens. Like a lot of men, and it's fascinating because I do interviews with male radio hosts, and they're all saying, "Well, women don't really want this." Mm-hmm. I say, yes, they do. They don't want a man who thinks my only role is bringing in the money, and I come home and I do nothing. I'm oblivious to what's going on at home. No, they want a man who comes home, is aware of what's going on in their home, sees problems that need to be dealt with, steps forward and deals with them. That's a hero to a woman. A man who comes home and thinks, oh, look, I'm bringing in all this money, I'm so great. Well, that's good. It's good to earn a living. It's definitely necessary. But if you're oblivious to what's going on, she feels like that you've become one of the children. She feels you're just shirking your responsibilities, and she feels you're not doing enough. And I've even had men say, my wife says I don't do enough, but I do all the housework, I wash the dishes, I change diapers. Why does she say I'm not doing enough? Because you're not showing your share of leadership. You're leaving everything to her, and she doesn't want that. She wants a man who's a man of the house, not a controlling tyrant, but who shows his share of leadership.
Wow, that is really awesome insight. And so let's talk a little bit specifically about the book. So how can the principles in your book, Being the Strong Man a Woman Wants, Timeless Wisdom on Being a Man, really help to save these relationships and avoid the pain of breakup?
Well, what I tell men is, a man will say to me, we've been married 5 years, 10 years, she rules the roost, she makes all the decisions. How can I start showing leadership in that situation? Especially if I try to show leadership, she undermines me. Well, first of all, the first thing you do is, if she's making a decision, don't say, oh, I'm going to show I'm a leader, and we're not going to do that. We're going to do the complete opposite. That's just undermining her. It's going to lead to more conflict, and it's stupid. I mean, if what she wants to do is a good thing, do it. Look for problems that are not being dealt with, like with your kids, with your home, anything in your family that there are problems, there are situations that need to be dealt with. You become aware of it, find a solution, and implement it. I can give you an example. I was helping a friend of mine who's telling me, he's in this situation, earning a good income, but, leaving everything to his wife. Well, one of his kids that dropped out of high school was just doing nothing all day, just sleeping all day and staying up all night with his friends. And I said, that's not good. And he was blaming his wife for this situation. I said, well, if your wife can't deal with it, this is a situation you have to step forward and show leadership. So I said, maybe one thing you could do, you have your own business, maybe you could give him a job in your business, so he'd have a reason to get up in the morning. You can't just lecture him. And he said, yeah, he's doing it, and said now he's a hero. Now his wife says, well, there was a problem. She couldn't deal with it. He actually stepped forward and dealt with it. That's it. Become aware. Don't, if she's dealing with things, let her deal with it. But look for problems that are not being dealt with and show leadership. And, at first she might be credulous. You might think, well, she might undermine you, but just keep doing it. You will become her hero because that's what she wants. She wants you to show your share of leadership. It's not about making every decision. It's about showing your share and not leaving everything to her.
Good. Great advice. Great advice. And so you were published in USA Today. Tell us about that article.
Well, that's interesting. That article was about, I was saying earlier that how are men portrayed on TV today, like how our fathers, they're really portrayed as buffoons. And I said you could really look back at a show like Father Knows Best, although it's idyllic and not realistic, but, just to watch how the father, Jim Anderson, he came home every day. He became aware of what was going on at home. He saw the problems that were involving his kids, his wife, and that were not being dealt with. He stepped forward and he dealt with them. I mean, he was showing his share of leadership. And people can say, well, it's so idealistic. It was idyllic. It wasn't really. It's not real life. Everything was so perfect. That's true. But just watching him, he came home every day, and he showed his share of leadership. Also, he didn't raise his voice. He was calm. He saw a situation. He dealt with it calmly. Even though one show where they were really under financial stress, he remained calm, and he said, how did we get into this situation? We didn't really do this. And he was really a role model. Although, admittedly, it's idyllic, but he was a role model for this is what a father should be. Now today, all the shows with fathers, it's they're buffoons, they're failures. They need their wives to rescue them. They get into a mess. They need their wives to rescue them. Well, that may happen sometimes, but so many men are thinking, well, is this what a father is? He needs his wife to solve every problem. If you do that, your wife's going to feel like I don't have a husband.
Right. And I thought in reading the article, I thought that it was very interesting because I think what the underlying message is really what's valuable. And of course, you're going to have people that say, oh, that's idealistic. Oh, things aren't like that. But the principles are the same. And I think that's what you're saying in your book. I think that's what you're saying in this overall area of gender role reversal. So I have to ask, you have to tell us the story of really what made you so interested in this area.
Well, like a lot of books of this type, it was my own journey. I was married for 10 years, then I got divorced. I thought I was a great husband, then I got divorced. And like a lot of people, I blamed my ex-wife. I blamed everybody. And then you come to the point of asking yourself, what do I have to learn from this? I don't want to go through this again. And I really set off on a journey. So I started listening to other men. What do I need to learn about being a man in a relationship, in a marriage? I started listening to other men, and we're all confused. We all think we're trying our best, and it's just not working. Then I started reading books on relationships, and they really didn't say anything to me about what it means to be a man in a relationship. Most of those books really focused for women. They really don't give advice for men, like that wisdom that fathers used to teach their sons. And then when I went to that time, this was in writings that have been written over the centuries about advice that fathers gave to younger men of being a man. I was blown away because it coincided with what I heard women complain is lacking in men today. They don't show leadership. They don't make decisions. They don't take responsibility. It seems like there's this giant disconnect. All the things that men are being told aren't working, and we want them to work. We want to, if you would have said, do this to make your marriage work, I would have done it. But we're trying to find the insight that works, and all this stuff with all the like I said, what we see on television, the messages from so-called experts, it's not working. It's just like theories that are great when some expert tries to explain them, but really, it's like, is it so politically incorrect to say a man should be strong and take charge and show leadership? The interesting thing was I thought, at first I would tell men, read the book, don't show it to your wives. But it's ended up the wives are the one who buy the book and give it to their husbands. Say, read this. This is what I want.
Wow. Wow, that's interesting because my thought when I came across this was that one possibility is that, there probably about the last 20 years or so, there's been this big push for women's empowerment, and I'm certainly a part of that and a proponent of it to a certain extent, to the extent that it is it has a positive impact. Not just on the woman, but on the family as a unit. And so I think that part of that is exactly what you said. So there are all these books out there. They're geared towards women, and these are the things that you can do, and, take charge, sister, and all of these things. But there's not a lot out there for men when now you have this huge shift in the family dynamic. What has been the response to the principles in your book? I know you mentioned what women have said, but what has been your response from the men who have read this book?
Well, there's two types of responses. One is, like I said, some will say, no one's ever told me this before. Some who are divorced will say, if I had known this before, I probably wouldn't be divorced today. Some men, they don't believe it. They don't agree with it. They're so convinced that, oh no, let the women make all the decisions, that so I say, well, if you don't agree with this, just ask the women around you. I was on one radio show once where the host was asking me all these questions about the book. It was a male host, and he was making all these snide comments, and I thought, okay, this is talk radio. He wants to be provocative. And then he says, okay, Elliott, we're only going to have women call in and see if they agree with you or they agree with me, because I disagree with you. So I said, okay. So we had time for 5 women to call in, and they all complained about how fed up and frustrated they were with their husbands, who wouldn't show any leadership and wouldn't make any decisions. Like he was totally blown away. I think he thought that women would call in and yell at me that I was a chauvinist, and no, he was like he didn't get his fireworks that he was expecting. The women were saying, yeah, we want men to take charge and show leadership. We don't want men who are just withdrawn and step back when there's a situation and think they're being so non-controlling by telling their wives to deal with everything. It's not being non-controlling. It's really shirking your duty to be the man of the house, to be a partner, to be a husband.
Absolutely. In all regards, I think this is a pretty controversial position. And as much as I agree, again, like you've mentioned, there are other people who don't agree. Like you just mentioned, the host of the show that you were on. How do you deal with the negative feedback, though, that you received from this book?
Well, it's interesting. I thought women generally agree with the book. I didn't suspect that they would be so freely supporting it. I thought, because so much of the messages we get is, women, like you say, women are strong, they're leaders, and they are. But women will tell me, women who are successful in business will say, I may be a boss at work, but when I'm a man, I want to feel like a woman. I want him to take charge. It's really the men who criticize it, and I really tell them, I say, ask your wife, ask other women if this is what they want, and you will be surprised, at their response, because, it like I said, first I tell men, don't show the book to your wife. Now I say, give it to your wife. I gave a book to a friend of mine who was having problems in his marriage, and he read it, and I think his wife thought it was about being a tyrant, and then she read the book, and she said to him, you're not doing what the book says. Let's read it together. Really, I think women are frustrated with men who are so convinced that they just leave everything to their wives. They're being great husbands. No, a woman really wants a man who shares leadership with her, and together they raise their family together, and not someone who just says, oh, you handle it, you know better, you handle it, I'll just go out, work long hours and bring in the money. Money's important, no question, but I tell men, just like you work hard at your job because you want to provide a nice life for your family, you have to save some of that energy when you come home to show leadership and deal with what's going on for the same reason, because you want a nice life for your family. You don't want to end up divorced. You don't want your kids to be from a broken family. You got to do this also. It's also important, and they need it. I think that there are situations that maybe your wife can't deal with it. Maybe the situation needs someone with your expertise, because that's really why men and women are together. Men are different, women are different. They each bring their own talents to marriage, and she wants you to be part of that. She wants you to show your share of leadership.
Great. Absolutely awesome. In addition to the book, what are some other things that you're working on right now?
Well, the main thing is really that book. I've been working on developing a presentation that I want to start giving, like teaching groups of, particularly of men, because there's so many men's groups, and they're kind of searching for what they're in difficult marriages, they're in bad situations, they're in unhappy marriages. They want to make their wives happy, and they're just lost. So I'm really working on that, and that's really what I'm focused on. My goal is to change the men of the world, and I'm doing it one man at a time. And as you mentioned, the book's been translated into 24 languages, and that's very exciting for me because it's reaching people who all over the world. I mean, I'm able to influence people with these insights in all these different countries, people who don't read English. So it's all part of the goal. We got to change the world. We got to change the men of the world so that teach them how to improve their relationships and save their marriages, so that people will stay married. Because really, so many of the men that I met who were divorced, they're all such nice guys. Like, you sort of wonder, like, well, I remember the first time I was invited to a men's group, a divorced men's group. I thought, I'm not going to fit in. I was a nice guy. These guys are probably all tyrants. I went, they were all the nicest guys. I said, how come we're all divorced? Because it's really because we weren't the kind of men that women wanted. And really that's what this book is about. It's about how men can improve their relationships and save their marriage. And that's really a key thing. I mean, there shouldn't be so much divorce today. I think people, get married of goodwill, and men really want to make their wives happy, and they're just lost and confused about what they need to do.
Awesome. So what would you say, because again, as much as I agree, this is still a controversial subject, what's some advice you'd give our listeners who are budding authors, but they're writing about controversial topics? What would be an encouraging word for them?
Well, just do it. If you're just be prepared to deal with criticism and comments you receive. I received a couple, but I think also be prepared to explain it, because I think sometimes, like, the criticism I got is when people really didn't understand what the book was about, and when people thought, let's say I'm telling men to be controlling tyrants and be this macho bossy person. No, not at all. So it's a matter of really be prepared. Prepare yourself. Anticipate what questions you might get, and have responses prepared to respond to them. And that's part of it. I mean, you have to be able to. You want to get your message out. You have to be prepared to defend what you think and what you're saying in your book.
Absolutely. I mean, you have to take the good with the bad. Everyone is not going to be a fan. Everyone is not going to agree with your particular thoughts that you're putting forth. So very, very, very good advice. How can our listeners purchase your book?
Okay, it's available on Amazon, both as a paperback and as an ebook. It's also an ebook on Kobo and iBooks, and it's also available in bookstores. And if you go into a store and they're sold out, just ask them for it, and they'll order it for you and get it to you pretty quickly.
Great. So, Real Perspectives listeners, I'm encouraging you to get Elliott's book. It's entitled Being the Strong Man a Woman Wants, Timeless Wisdom on Being a Man. Elliott, thank you so much for being a part of our show today. And Real Perspectives listeners, until next time, I'm your host, LaTanya Moore, where we seek real people with real issues and real solutions from real perspectives.